Hey, people. Yesterday was a very important day in Connecticut history. And if you watch historical Connecticut movies about
Followed was unprecedented.
what made
Samuel
Connecticut,
Colt opened his revolver works in Hartford in the 1850s. Oliver Winchester built rifles in New Haven. For a stretch of the 19th and early 20th centuries, the small arms capital of the world was a 30-mile triangle in central Connecticut. And the small arms industry was only one floor of the building. Bristol made brass. Waterbury made buttons and clocks. Ansonia made clocks too. Naugatuck made rubber. New Britain made hardware. A state roughly the size of 2 Yellowstone national parks was out manufacturing whole regions of the country 10 times its size. Connecticut didn't industrialize America. Connecticut industrialized America before America knew what industrialization was.
Eli Whitney in Connecticut started manufacturing, okay? And Connecticut became this superpower, okay? It took away its counties, and over time, it really started screwing up and becoming a communist country. So now Chicago has, had 300 murders per year. And it is Connecticut that is becoming the new Chicago, and obviously the news won't cover it. So yesterday we had a court date in Stamford Superior Court, and you can't find an ethical judge. No, you can't. Attorney General Tong was supposed to show up. Now, last week, Tong didn't show up at the Attorneys General meeting for J.D. Vance in Washington, D.C. He's like, hey, where's Attorney General Tong? Tong thinks he doesn't have to show, okay? So here we go. We had court, 10 o'clock, Stamford, Connecticut, the most criminal court in the United States, folks. It's bar none. There is no justice in the Constitution state. What happened in Connecticut is dragging the entire country down. Our legislators suck. Our congressional candidates, Himes, Hayes, Courtney, DeLauro, Larson. Larson's out. Larson threatened to shoot me on January 27th of this year, and I was shot at on February 28th. I went to court. I told the judge. The guy's... maybe he's brain dead. I don't know, okay? But he shares the docket with Judge White. Judge White needs to go to prison forever, okay? Forever and ever. Connecticut has become a bribery machine. Bribe after bribe. You can blame the GOP because they're also in on the bribery, doing nothing about the judiciary. Tom O'Day does nothing about the judiciary. Craig Fishbein on the judiciary does nothing about the criminal judiciary. I wrote 63 complaints so far about judges. They are unanswered. I am suing the chief court administrator for not administering the law in Connecticut. So I went to court. I tried to keep my composure. I spoke for an hour and 20 minutes on the record, and when the transcript comes out, we'll see what happens, what the judge will do, Judge Lee. Judge Lee knows that the elections are rigged by Connecticut. Connecticut has become a organized crime zone. Okay? Yes, Danbury hacked Pennsylvania. Yes, Wisconsin hacked Michigan. Yes, different towns. Shelton hacked Wisconsin. Southington hacked. It's a hacking, controlling, Smartmatic, and Sequoia, if you understand what I'm saying, criminal enterprise built on election fraud. Look at the court back office system. Tyler Technologies. The judge doesn't know anything about it. He doesn't know anything about the back office of the court and how they erase the cases. Excuse me? I have 300 cases. 250 of them are missing. Here we go. I go to court. I say, Judge, Your Honor, why are we here? Oh, we're hearing motion 64. Okay. I have a question, Your Honor. Look in the screen. Where are the other 63 motions? He couldn't find one. He could not find them. Oh, we're here to hear motion 64. Okay, so there's 68 motions in our case. And only one shows. Number 64 was to recuse Judge Ozales. I said, yeah, recuse Judge Ozales. Why? Because I filed 74 protection orders. She heard 7 of them. I got shot at. And the DA behind the entire case falsely arrested me. And Dumas, Department of Mental Health, said I never ran for U.S. Senate. I said, Your Honor, you know Heather Lindsay. Yes, I know Heather Lindsay. She voted for me. I have her ballot. You know Andrew Pritchard. Yeah, I know Andrew Pritchard. He voted for me. I have his ballot. Really? Your Honor, you know Sam Magliari? He says, no, I don't know that guy. There is not a chance that he does not know Sam Magliari because he is suing Judge White. Judge White. I said on the record, Your Honor, I was on a football team. Yeah. I was the quarterback. Okay. The wide receiver was Judge White's nephew. He goes, okay. The nephew told me 30 times that his uncle killed his cousin. Now, he's partners with Judge White in the docket. They share the docket. For 30 years. So I say, well, I'm talking about Dennis Bradley. Do you know Dennis Bradley? Oh, yeah. He's a Jim Himes staffer. He doesn't work for the public defender. Yet, who's paying him? Who's paying him? Dennis Bradley was framed. Dennis Bradley was extorted. Dennis Bradley is friends with Judge White. They're on a first-name basis. Hey, where's Dennis? That's exactly what was said when T.J. Elgin got framed. I was there. Judge White was not there. It was televised. He was on a television screen in the courtroom. I've never been in the same room as Judge White, nor will I ever go in the same room as Judge White. So here we go. We have a transcript. I say to the judge, Your Honor, where's the Attorney General? He never showed up because he doesn't have to, because the judges are protecting Attorney General Tong, who sued President Trump 55 times. I think. Maybe it's more. Could be more. It's not less. It's certainly not less. So I say, what is Connecticut? What has Connecticut become?
But that head start was a trap. When American manufacturing started leaving in the second half of the 20th century, Connecticut got hit first too. The mills in Waterbury closed. The arms plants in Hartford and Bridgeport shrank or shuttered. Bridgeport, once the state's third biggest manufacturing center, lost roughly half its industrial jobs in a single generation. The brass towns went quiet. The brick factories along the eastern rivers turned into empty shells. Whole neighborhoods that had been built around a single mill suddenly had no reason to exist. You cannot be the first to fall if you weren't the first to rise. Connecticut's industrial collapse wasn't a Rust Belt story. Connecticut was the template for the Rust Belt story. It happened in New England, in a state most Americans don't even think of as industrial. 2 decades before the term Rust Belt was coined. And the wealth that's still in Connecticut today, the wealth that makes it America's second richest state, almost none of it sits in the cities that built the place. It sits 50 miles to the southwest, in a different Connecticut entirely. The gap between those two Connecticuts is the cliff this whole video has been walking you toward. If you want to see Connecticut's inversion in real time, you don't need a map. You need a car and 90 minutes. Start at the New York state line in Greenwich. Median home values in Greenwich's better neighborhoods clear $2 million without much effort. Backyards are larger than Manhattan apartments. Hedge funds operate out of low-slung office parks tucked behind stone walls and old hedgerows. The cars and driveways are not...
Hedge funds run the state. Bernie Madoff set it up. I was a Bernie Madoff whistleblower in 2000. I sued him 200 times, and he never came to court because the judges are on the payroll. So when you look at what's happened to Connecticut, it is all organized crime, all of it. And the GOP is just as dirty as the Democratic Party. You can look at, what is it, S380G, and there are congressional candidates blowing the whistle, and they need to be supported, and you can hear them if you listen. But what's happening in Connecticut...
The cars you see on most American streets. Drive 20 minutes northeast and you hit Stamford. Glass towers along the highway. Bloomberg has offices here. So does Charter Communications. So does Synchrony Financial.
Charter Communications bribed Richard Blumenthal $60,000 to do their 5G neural net graphene oxide fusion center surveillance on America. People from Texas are being remotely monitored by Connecticut. People in Florida connected to Antifa are whistleblowers being remotely monitored from Stamford, Connecticut, from Norwalk, Connecticut, from Bridgeport, Connecticut, through Lafayette Street in Bridgeport, which is the FBI headquarters. Folks, you can't make this up.
Stamford is the Manhattan that didn't fit on Manhattan, the spillover wealth of one of the richest cities on earth, parked just over the state line. Keep driving, 10 more minutes, you're now in Bridgeport. Stamford is half an hour behind you, and Bridgeport, by several measures, is among the poorest large cities in New England. Boarded storefronts, empty industrial lots where the Whitney-era arms factories used to stand. The waterfront still has the bones of those plants, but the jobs are gone, and they have been for 40 years. Keep going. Up I-91 toward the center of the state. Hartford, the insurance capital of the United States. Aetna is headquartered here. So,
insurance companies run the country from Connecticut. Hedge funds run the country from Connecticut. And when you figure out what they're doing, the court needs to be shut due to criminal activity. The judges get promoted after screwing the pooch. The Oxycontin industry and all the murders all start in Stamford, Connecticut. It's organized crime. And it destroyed the state a long time ago. Aetna, Please.
So is the Hartford. So is Travelers. So is Cigna. There is more capital flowing through this small city in any given hour than through most American metropolitan areas combined. And Hartford itself is one of the poorest large cities in America by household income.
Hartford loses $500 million a year. And the state keeps taking money from Darien, Connecticut, from Norwalk, Connecticut, and paying Hartford, who is the organizational crime syndicate. Crime syndicate. The people in Hartford need to go to prison for a century. Okay? How about 10 life sentences?
Keep driving east toward the Rhode Island border. Eventually, you reach Windham County. Old mill towns like Willimantic, where the brick factories along the river still stand, but mostly stay.
Willimantic, the heroin capital of New England. You can't make it up. The heroin capital of New England gets the meth and distributes the meth. And whistleblowers are saying the meth is delivered in state police cars. Did you hear what I just said?
Stand empty. This is Connecticut's lowest per capita income. The eastern edge of the state. You started 90 minutes ago in one of the richest neighborhoods in the United States, and you are now in one of the poorest counties in New England. Here are the numbers in case the drive didn't land. Fairfield County's personal income per capita in 2023 was $139,006. Windham County's was less than half of that. By both federal and census methodologies, Fairfield's per capita income is more than double Windham's. Inside the same small state, under the same flag. Statewide, Connecticut's top 1% earns more than 37 times what the bottom 99% earns. That is the third largest gap of any state in America, behind only New York and Florida.
And it is the lawyers who run the state. If your Republican chair does not do what Ben Proto tells them to do, what State Central decides, then the chair is replaced. Norwalk's chair was recently replaced. Shelton's chair recently replaced. Shelton is possibly the dirtiest town in America now, taking over for Stanford. Oh, yeah. They got a senator who's a sexual deviant operating. The state will do nothing about it. Why? Because he's a senator. Oh, he can do what he wants. The town doesn't prosecute human trafficking. I call the police. I went there. I gave them a ton of evidence. Oh, sorry. We have no budget for human trafficking. Now, hold on. I'm not going to go there. It's real. It's real.
And inside Connecticut, the Bridgeport-Stamford-Norwalk metro area is more extreme still. The top 1% there earns 62 times the bottom 99%. That makes it the fifth most unequal metropolitan area in the entire United States. Connecticut is the only state in America where being the richest place in the country and being the most unequal place in the country are the same sentence. This isn't a rich state with
the most unequal state, the richest, and 60 times the money of other people in the state. Hold on a second. You might be missing the point here. It's the judges and BlackRock. It's State Street. It's Vanguard. They own the country. Connecticut owns the country, folks. Connecticut is destroying the country. And the court case yesterday demonstrates the entire problem. Okay? I asked witnesses to come to court. Court watch. I said, Go to the court case. I will get the transcript. The judge is dying for the current transcript. He's saying, I got to get this transcript of yesterday's court date where I spoke for an hour and 20 minutes. I'm not allowed to speak, folks. I'm not speaking now like I spoke yesterday because I planned it. Nothing I do on YouTube or Twitter is planned. Okay, I just say, hey, let's go do this. Boom, go ahead. One Take Studios, right? One Take Studios. The state of Connecticut put Sam Magliari in jail for 650 days because he sued Judge White, whose nephew told me 30 times his uncle killed his cousin. Why would the top judge in Connecticut in the criminal court, in the most powerful town in America, Stamford, Connecticut, which is also the most corrupt town according to Ronald Reagan, he might know, where the attorney general doesn't show up to court for what he did? What did he do? He colluded on mental health and made Dumas claim that I was delusional because I never ran for U.S. Senate against Richard Blumenthal, who offered me a bribe through the FBI, through confidential informants who have clearance, who you know their names. If I mention their names, you're going to recognize who they are. And they, in turn, said, Johnny Flynn's delusional. He never ran for U.S. Senate because the Secretary of State destroyed all the votes. I said, Your Honor, you know Heather Lindsay, right? Yeah. She voted for me. You know Andrew Pritchard? Yeah, he voted for me. Okay, fine. We're friends. Okay. Sam Magliari? Oh, no, I don't know Sam. I don't know that guy. I don't know that guy. The top criminal judge shares the docket with the judge from yesterday. He knows Dr. Ahuja raped Heather Lindsay. He knows Heather Lindsay got bribed by the Stamford police, $3 million bribe. She did not accept it. Oh, believe me, she should have accepted it. And she knows Dr. Ahuja's brother threatened her at gunpoint, threatened Chris Kelly at gunpoint, raped Chris Kelly, raped Heather Lindsay, came after me. I filed 74 protection orders against the guy who's claiming he bought all the judges. I said, Your Honor, you know that Judge White heard the Ahuja case. Yeah. And that Ahuja had $18 million in the trunk of his car and boasted that he was bribing police officers from Texas to Connecticut, $300,000 each, driving around bribing police officers to get drug dealers out of prison. How do they do that? Confidential informant falsified testimony on the record. Period. Spring a guy? Oh, now you owe us a favor. Go murder this guy. Go murder Officer Dealey. Go murder Officer Lamb. Oh, go murder John Flynn. That asshole. You know what? I can't tell you my next thought. Because I'm out of coffee and I got to go get some more. But all is well. It's on the record. That's what we're doing. We're putting everything on the record. And next week is our meeting. And it's vitally important. So when you listen...
With a poor corner. This is a state with two completely different economies wearing the same name. And if you...
Fascism and communism. The GOP in Connecticut is a fascist organization, and the DNC in Connecticut is a communist country. They have become a communist country. So,
If you like videos that find the largest story inside the smallest patch of map, subscribe before this one ends, because the next inversion is the one that explains how Connecticut got away with it for so long. The richest Connecticut and the poorest Connecticut are both real.
because Oxy bribes the judges, Purdue Pharma, the largest lobbyist groups are in Connecticut. They're operating right under your Ukraine's lobbyist is from Connecticut. Hunter Biden's lobbyist is Blumenthal's lobbyist, which is Murphy's lobbyist, which is Hunter Biden's lobbyist. ML Strategies. You can't get them in the courtroom because Judge Ozales is a criminal. She is working. She just screwed up on Jeffrey Epstein epically. Miss Groff in New Canaan has 158,000 connections to Epstein. Who took Epstein money? Tom O'Day on the judiciary. Really? That's amazing. A $250 bribe, which seems like nothing. No, it's a very small amount of money. To be sold for that price and rig a convention. He will lose his law license over this. You will see. I will do it. I don't care anymore. You can't stop what's happening without taking out the Connecticut judiciary and taking away their law licenses. What's Rob Sampson doing on the judiciary as a real estate broker? As an insurance salesman? Hold on a second.
They are 90 minutes apart. They vote for the same governor. They send senators to the same Congress. And the line that separates them runs straight through the cities Eli Whitney built.
The
The
Constitution
inequality didn't appear in a
state.
vacuum. It was
Inequality. A pro se litigator in Connecticut can't get evidence. And when Ben Proto said to me, Johnny, how come you've never won a lawsuit? That doesn't stop me from putting stuff on the record. Ben Proto's basically done, folks, if you look at what's collected already. You can't replace a chair in Stamford, Connecticut, and put some proxy up as chair and have him rig the delegates on an Indian tribe property, which invalidates the entire thing. When you falsify the elections in the state, the governor can't appoint a judge. These judges have no standing. These judges aren't real. When you rig an election and the elections can't be certified and the cast vote record gets destroyed, and then Scott Bates goes to Serbia and rigs their election, and Ben Proto goes to the Virgin Islands to rig their election, and Georgia's election is rigged by Connecticut, and then Arizona's election is rigged by Connecticut. All these cases you're hearing about are one type of election fraud. It's not the most important one. Who flipped 10 million votes from Biden to Biden from Trump? Who flipped 10 million votes? Not the ballot stuffers of Bridgeport that got paid by Mark Zuckerberg $315,000, which Judge Clark in Bridgeport Court covered it up. Go to the case. Go to the Ganem Gomes case. I'm a plaintiff. I got blocked and knocked out of the case so that I could not admit the evidence of the bribery. Yes, New Haven takes bribes from Mark Zuckerberg, yes. Hartford, Greenwich got $500,000 from Mark Zuckerberg. The richest town, which controls the delegates that rigged the convention that just took place. So 3 conventions for federal races in a row got rigged, and they keep doing it.
Built inside a political culture that has been allergic to change for almost 4 centuries. January 14th, 1639. 3 river towns, Windsor, Wethersfield, and Hartford, adopted a document called the Fundamental Orders. The Orders are widely considered the first written constitution in America. They made no reference to the British Crown. They claimed authority directly from the consent of the governed. They limited the powers of the governor. They set term limits in 1639.
Why does Connecticut have no sheriffs? It's so that judges can break the law and no one can arrest them. What did I just say? Why does Connecticut have no sheriffs? Every single person running for Congress better reinstall sheriffs as their number one objective. Has anyone said that? No. Not even the guys I'm backing. Not even my favorite, DeBarris, has never said we need to reinstate sheriffs in the state of Connecticut to fix what the judicial corruption is all about.
320 years later, in 1959, Connecticut made it official. Constitution State became the state's legal nickname. Every license plate has carried those 2
It's an oxymoron, Connecticut.
words ever since. Now look at what happened in between. Connecticut wrote the playbook for self-government in 1639. Then it spent the next 350 years afraid to open the playbook again. The state's other nickname, the one Connecticut had before Constitution State, was the Land of Steady Habits. It earned that label in the late 1700s and early 1800s for a political and religious culture so resistant to change that even constitutional reform happened in slow motion. The current state constitution dates to 1965. Most states have rewritten theirs more times than that. Most states don't put theirs on a license plate. Every car on I-95 advertises a 400-year-old idea because nothing Connecticut has done since has been bigger. The pioneer became the museum. So far, we've found a state that's first and last at the same time. Rich and poor at the same time. A pioneer and a fossil at the same time. But there's one more inversion, and this one is the reason a lot of people from Connecticut can't actually agree on what Connecticut is. Officially, Connecticut is a New England state, one of the original 6. Geographically, Connecticut's southwestern corner, Greenwich, Darien, New Canaan, Stamford, Westport, is not really New England in any practical sense. It is New York's overflow tank. Here are the numbers. Metro North's New Haven line carries roughly 32 million passengers a year between Connecticut and Manhattan. About 82,000 of those rides happen every weekday morning and evening. Greenwich to Grand Central is 45 minutes door to door. The town of
125 million people use the train bridge in Norwalk, the Walk Bridge, which is 125 years old, and it's falling in the river. I wouldn't go under it in your boat because debris falls. Big chunks of cement fall from that bridge and will hit you in the head. That train is a $1.6 billion disaster that's going to take 6 years to fix. And that doesn't stop there. There are so many contract bids that end up filling the coffers of the Democratic Party in Norwalk, Connecticut. McClutchy can't build a building without paying Lamont's people, Eloisa Menendez, a bribe. When she was on the Common Council of Norwalk, she accepted a $10,000 check right in front of everyone, and then voted for McClutchy's project. And they do executive session. It's absolutely ridiculous. They do it right out in the open. So you can go to the Common Council meetings. McClutchy will be in the audience saying, I just gave her a check for 10 grand, so my project should go forward. And what does she do? She runs the Ethics Commission. I filed 18 ethics violations. Never had a hearing. Money laundering, murder for hire, extortion, bribery. Oh no, we don't have to listen to Mr. Flynn, because we'll just steal $50 million from him and then extort his family and go after his family using the Norwalk police. Mr. Flynn's not a sounding board. He's got nothing to do with nothing.
Of Greenwich, Connecticut is closer in commute time to Times Square than the Bronx is to JFK Airport. And here's the kicker. Hartford is not on Metro North. The state capital, Connecticut's political and insurance center, isn't even plugged into the rail system that defines daily life in the state's wealthiest county. The two halves of Connecticut don't just have different economies. They have different transportation networks, oriented toward different cities in different states with different cultures. Two completely different states share the same rectangle on the map. One faces Boston eventually. One faces Manhattan exclusively. Drive east from Greenwich and you'll reach New England eventually. Drive west from Greenwich and you're in New York in 12 minutes. Connecticut is the only state in America where the question, where do you live, needs a follow-up question. Which Connecticut?
Nickname
Step
built
back
on
from
a
all of
lie.
it. Look at the pattern. Connecticut's unofficial nickname, the one residents actually use about themselves, is the Nutmeg State. The Oxford English Dictionary traces the term to 1834. The legend goes like this. In the early 1800s, Yankee peddlers traveled south from Connecticut with wagons full of household goods. Among the goods, supposedly, were nutmegs. Except, according to the story, some of those nutmegs were not actually nutmegs. They were carved out of wood. Pieces of timber, shaped to look like spice, sold to unsuspecting customers in markets from Virginia to the Carolinas. Historians have looked at this story for almost 200 years. Their verdict is that it is almost certainly apocryphal. Carving wooden nutmegs would have cost more time and labor than just selling real nutmegs. One competing theory holds that Southern buyers, unfamiliar with how to grate the spice, assumed they'd been cheated when their nutmeg wouldn't crack open the way they expected. The wood story is folklore, and it has been folklore for almost 2 centuries. The fact that the legend probably isn't true is the most Connecticut thing about the legend. A state that pretends to have a coast it doesn't really have. A state where the richest county is more than twice as rich as the poorest, and they share the same governor. A state with a 400-year-old constitution on every license plate and a culture famous for refusing to change anything. A state that's New England.
A sanctuary state. They don't believe in federal law. And they are now targeted because Trump wants to put Attorney General Tong in jail. And when you bring him to court, he won't appear because he's a communist. And the judges work for the communists in Connecticut. So I'll just leave it at that. What an excellent video.